The events of this chapter take place not long after Evelina has moved from Puerto Rico to New York City. She lives in El Barrio, a neighborhood with the largest community of Spanish-speaking people in the city. Evelina is living with her Aunt Maria and Uncle Juan. A young woman named Miriam rents a room for herself and her baby boy Diego from the family. The Great Depression was hurting the neighborhood, just as it was hurting the rest of the United States. Many people were out of work and unable to feed their families, or themselves. Old clothes were repaired, not replaced. Who had money for...
Mr. Frierson, please come to the front office. Mr. Frierson, thank you.
Who had money for a new coat or new gloves? Empty stomachs and worn clothes made February 1935 seem even colder than usual. The Depression was in its sixth year. The people were struggling just to survive. Even those who had jobs like Aunt Maria and Uncle Juan needed to find extra income to make ends meet. To those who were suffering the most, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt established food programs for the needy. Unemployed people and people earning very little money were given forms to fill out for extra food. Completed forms were exchanged for food packages at the distribution center. The government packages included such basics as canned goods, flour, cereal, powdered milk, peanut butter, and cheese. To claim their food, people had to complete the return government forms. For some, this wasn't easy. When Miriam lost her job, she refused to fill out the forms and go for her food. "I'm no charity case," said Miriam. "I don't want free handouts. I want to work and earn my food." She was not alone in her thinking this way. "It's too humiliating to go with a piece of paper in one's hand to ask for food like a beggar," said their neighbor, Senor Sanchez. "No, I can't. I won't beg for food. No." But Evelina could see that many of these people were hungry. Their children went to school without having eaten breakfast. In the streets, she saw people selling apples for pennies. She saw homeless people huddled in doorways. She saw people line up by the hundreds in front of soup kitchens waiting to eat. Yet her neighbors refused available food. This made no sense to Evelina. Without help, Miriam, Diego, and Senor Sanchez might be huddled in the doorways or on soup kitchen lines too. Evelina wanted to do something. Her mother had brought her up with a strong sense of right or wrong. Her mother used to tell her that people who work hard and pay taxes deserve some help from the government when times are difficult. The government should help those in need find jobs. It should, her mother said, make sure everyone can live a decent life. Her mother was right. Why did these people refuse to claim food that they needed and deserved? Evelina was confused. So she spoke to her aunt and her uncle. "People are hungry. They would work if there were no jobs. But there aren't any. Now they need food to nourish themselves and their families. They were wrong to refuse." "Well," said Uncle Juan sadly, "most of them are too ashamed. They don't understand, and it's not their fault. Sometimes I take the forms of one or two of your neighbors with me when I go get food. As long as I'm there, I can bring back a few items for them." "Evelina," Aunt Maria told her, "we, Puerto Ricans, are proud people. We do not want to appear like beggars or charity cases. That's just the way we are. It's our nature. What can we do?" "No," answered Evelina. "That food belongs to the people, and they should have it. Things must change." "And who is going to change things, young lady?" asked Uncle Juan. "I am," said Evelina, smiling. "And, Uncle, are you going to help?" Evelina spoke to Miriam. "I know how you feel about going for food, but you always talk about how much I help you with Diego. Now you must help me. Please come to the distribution center with me and Juan. Help us get the food. Remember, there are many hungry people out there." Miriam thought about it. "Since I can see how determined you are to do this," said Miriam, "I will go with you and Juan." That week, Evelina went to visit as many of her neighbors as she could find who were entitled to get food. "Fill out your forms," she told them. "I will get your food for you, don't worry." Some still weren't sure. "What if they don't give it to you?" asked Mrs. Josephina, who lived in the building across the street. "Then you will be no worse off today than you are now," answered Evelina. "But if it works, you will have food on your table." "Suppose they expect us to come in next time," another neighbor argued. "I promise," answered Evelina, "I will go again and again and again." She was determined to help her neighbors. "Just fill out your form and leave the rest to me." Once Evelina had convinced her neighbors to give her completed forms, she faced another big problem. The distribution center was located across town, and several trolley stops uptown as well. This meant at least a 40-minute trolley ride. How could she transport food for a dozen families such a long way with only Miriam and her uncle to help? "What about your cousin Santos?" suggested Maria. "Maybe he can help. He drives the trolley car that goes by the food center, and it stops right nearby on the corner of 116th Street. Evelina spoke to Santos. Her cousin agreed to let Evelina bring the food on his trolley, but it would have to be on the last run when he was returning to the depot. It would be safer then because he would have no passengers. Any other time, Santos would get caught using the trolley for personal business and lose his job. Santos' last run was very late in the evening, long after the food center had closed for the day. Once Evelina picked up the food, she would have a 5-hour wait in the cold February weather. So now the problem was where to wait with the food until the trolley came. Evelina visited a church that was nearby the food distribution center. She spoke to the minister about her plan to collect food for the poor. "We need your help, sir," she declared. "I will be taking many shopping bags of food to give to the poor and hungry families. We'll have to wait 5 hours before we can take it, and it's very cold. Please help." The minister was very impressed with little Evelina. He agreed to help her and ordered the church caretaker to let them wait with the food in the church basement until Santos came. The day arrived, and Evelina rode for free on Santos' trolley to the food distribution center. When she presented the stack of completed forms at the counter, all the workers were taken aback. "There were all the people who claimed this food?" asked the supervisor, who had been quickly called to the counter by one of the workers. "They're too ashamed to come," Evelina answered. "They feel like they are begging, so I have to come get their food for them." "This is too irregular," said the supervisor, shaking his head. "I don't know." "Is there a law against this, sir? Doesn't the food belong to the people who filled out the forms? Isn't this food for poor families and their children?" Evelina bombarded the supervisor with questions and statements. Plenty of people are starving, and you have so much food here. If they can't come to get it, then why can't I take it to them? "Please, sir," she pleaded. "In the name of justice, it's the only way, and it must be allowed." "You're wearing me out," the supervisor complained with a laugh. "But even if I give you all these shopping bags, how will you get them out of here? My uncle and my neighbor will be here in 1 hour to help. Then we are delivering the shopping bags to each and every family, right to their doors," she told him, "like I have promised them. I may come back every month, but who knows? Maybe some of these families will come here for themselves. Only don't worry, because the people will get their food." All the employees came out to see the girl with the pretty face and the dark curly hair was. Evelina smiled happily as she checked out the food against the completed forms. Then she took each shopping bag and set it against the wall and waited until she saw Uncle Juan and Miriam. They had each brought an empty wagon to the center. "You did it!" shouted Uncle Juan. Miriam hugged Evelyn. "You are something special, little Miss Evelina," she said. All three loaded the shopping bags into the wagons. The wagons were not big enough to carry 12 bags in one trip, so they made 2 trips to the nearby church before all the food was safely put into the basement. Then they waited for Santos and his trolley. Finally, in the darkness of night, they loaded the shopping bags onto the trolley. Santos shut off the lights inside the trolley. Then he told them that they must sit way in the back of the trolley. "You 3 will have to keep down and out of sight," said Santos. "I'll be passing by all the trolley stops, but," he added nervously, "if another driver or our dispatcher sees you, I'll be in trouble. So stay low." Evelina, Uncle Juan, and Miriam sat scrunched down in the shadows of the back of the trolley. Each time they passed the trolley stop, they heard Santos say a prayer under his breath. When he finally reached 116th Street, Evelina felt a sense of relief, just knowing that Cousin Santos would not be in trouble. That night, Evelina, Uncle Juan, and Miriam went to the door of every family that had completed the forms and distributed the food to them. On her next trip to the distribution center, Evelina was not alone. She was joined by a group of neighbors, including Senor Sanchez. "Evelina, you have given us courage," he told her. "From now on, I'll be going to get my own food, and so will the rest of us." With each passing month, Evelina's task of collecting food became easier. More and more neighbors went to the distribution center with her. Soon, all of her neighbors were seeking out the help they were entitled to. Evelina had shown her neighbors that there was no shame in accepting help when it was needed. Babies wouldn't cry through the night for food. Children wouldn't go hungry with no energy to learn. And people working or looking for work wouldn't get sick because they didn't have enough to eat.